Hey guys, Jeremy here with Simple Life. Welcome to another edition of Tool Time Tuesday. Now typically on Tool Time Tuesday, I like to share tools that I have at least some experience with. Some of them are my favorite tools that I've had for years. Some of them are newer tools that I'm like, this thing's really cool. I want to share this with you guys. This week we're going to do something a little different in that we're going to take a look at a tool that I've never used before. We're going to fire it up and test it out for the very first time here on this video. This is something I've been wondering about for a while. We're going to take a look at these small, inexpensive gravity feed sandblasting guns. Now, we're not going to get into the brand specifics because there comes a certain threshold of cheapness or low quality that once you're in that area, I don't really think it matters which brand we're talking about because these things are made as cheaply as possible. I think I paid, this was on sale, I paid is $10 or $12 for it. If you're Canadian, you might recognize the color scheme, but again, we're not going to give away the brands because I don't think it matters. Just suffice it to say that this is cheap. This is about as cheap as you can buy. But I'm still curious, you know, if this would work for a single job, it might be worth it even to look at it as a disposable tool of sorts. So what this is going to do, I'm hoping, is fill the need where I need a small little bit of sandblasting done, but it won't fit into my blast cabinet. Now, obviously, I probably wouldn't take this out and try and, you know, strip the paint off a frame of a pickup truck if I was restoring it or something like that. Who knows? Maybe we'll learn that this could do that. But just thinking about the size of the hopper, how inconvenient it's going to be, and then the fact that you're going to lose 100% of your media. It's a non-recoverable system. But, you know, for small jobs where it's like, hey, I could either spend a couple hours on a wire wheel and brush this bicycle frame. Maybe I could just spend 5 or 10 minutes and just shoot some sand at it, clean it up, get it ready for paint that way. Let's take a quick look at this, kind of get an idea of what we're dealing with, and then we're going to go outside and test it. All right, so let's quickly just check out what we're dealing with. Again, super inexpensive tool, and it looks that way as well. It looks like to be some type of an injected molded frame, and essentially it's just like a plastic frame where they put a few metal components that are required to make this thing work. We've got our hopper up on the top here. One thing to note, it is does have a hole in there because as you're sucking sand out of here, you would create obviously quite a vacuum, and I think it would really impede the flow of sand if it didn't have airflow going through to here. So one thing to keep in mind, you don't want to like fill this thing up with sand, set it down, it could leak out. But essentially we've got our little metal adapter here so you can put whatever type of a coupling you're using for your air compressor. Looks like they got some type of a little brass valve insert there. They've sealed it off with an O-ring. Coming up here, right here we've got a little hole in the frame there where the back part of this hopper is screwed to. I can't really see the screw inside there, but it's right there. And then it's also screwed onto the front right here. Now, media will come out through here, and then we've got an on-off valve here. And I see you've got a little roll pin there stopping it. And then we go out into the nozzle. So essentially we'll have air come up through here, through our valve, this way, and then as it's going through, it's going to start sucking this down once we open up this valve. This valve, I do believe it's metal. It's just coated to look like brass. This here is brass, I would definitely say, but this I don't think would be brass. That would be too expensive to manufacture. And then we've also got these replacement nozzles, replaceable nozzles. And just in the hopes that this thing might work, I actually did buy 2 replacement nozzles, partially because I live out of town and sometimes coming into town is a real pain in the butt. But there's our nozzle, there's the orifice that's going to go through there. This just threads onto there, and that's pretty much the gist of it. Right off the bat, there's one thing I do not like about it, and that is the trigger. I'm not a fan of full hand triggers. I mean, obviously if you got like a pressure washer wand or something like that, it's kind of nice. But for something like this, if I've got this thing full of sand, I might want to get a grip on it with some fingers wrapped around the handle. Well, in order to be able to pull the trigger, I can't do that. See, this trigger is designed to go like this. Maybe if you've got smaller hands, you'd be all right. But if I put my hand here, I can't even run this machine. Even a 2-finger trigger would be better than this. You know, so what I actually might end up doing, if this thing actually works all right, I might just cut this off so that I can at least use a couple of my digits to grip it and get some decent traction on it. I don't know. I just think it's nice if you could just had a single finger trigger or something like that. But there we have it. Super duper cheap. I would definitely worry if you drop this thing, you might it might be gone beyond repair. But yeah, I guess the next step is we'll put in our little fitting for our air line, and then we'll take it outside, fill it up with some sand, and we'll try sandblasting. All right, I don't have any spare of those kicking around, so I have to pillage it off of this. Definitely want to back up that little insert because I don't think that's gonna really do too well if we're torquing it. We're just gonna end up driving it into there or cracking the housing. So when you put your fittings on these little cheap plastic things, definitely back that nut up. You don't want that to move. I think that should be good. Real quickly, this is going to be what we're blasting, and this is what I went to school with. You know, these small little desks. We're in the process of setting up our homeschooling room right now, and the desks that we have there are a little bit high for our youngest. He's going into grade 1, and so we saw this. I think we got it for like $5, and we thought, you know what, that might be kind of a cool little thing to restore, put into the homeschool room, and he can work there. Little note: when I was in school, believe it or not, I was a big time nerd. Like I was a nerd. I was big, I was also athletic, but I was also very muchly a nerd. My desk, when I was in school, I actually modified the whole thing. I had a little battery, one of those large batteries for those lanterns. I forget what size cell it is. Anyways, I had one of those right here, and then I wired up a little switch, and then here I had a light so that I could see into my desks. So literally, I mean, I cut these things while the teacher was talking. I did all this work during class, and it was, don't do that, that's bad. But I had a little light in my desk, and I could flick it on so I could see what was in here. And then towards the summer, when it started getting warm, I actually wired up a little fan with a little propeller from a rubber band airplane and a little tiny electric motor. I had it all mounted with popsicle sticks that I hot glued into my desk. And when I was done, I pretty much couldn't store anything in my desk, but I had a fan and a light, and that was awesome. And yeah, anyways, just seeing that takes me back to my childhood. Then the media that we are going to use, this is 3060 recycled glass, and I believe that means 3260 grit, but this is the same stuff that I use in my sandblast cabinet, fairly common media. And then obviously, one of the more important things when we're doing this is proper PPE. When you're sandblasting, at a bare minimum, you need eye protection as well as a lung protection, some type of a good respirator. Ear protection definitely required as well, and then gloves. We'll get our PPE, we're gonna drag this outside, we'll fire up the air compressor, drag our hose out there. Anyways, let's head outside and see if this thing works. All right, I got some bad news here. Hopefully the audio is gonna be okay from now on, because I was out in the sea can and I was just grabbing some stuff, and I had this thing dangling out of my pocket, my lav mic. This is my Rode lav mic, which is a much better one than the Sennheiser, but just this portion of it is $299. And the audio, I love the sound of this microphone better than this one. Beast mode. Ouch. Ah. Bald beast mode. People are gonna see that. All right, let's go ahead and fill this hopper up. Make sure I have this tube off. Beauty. All right, let's see if this thing works. Yep, my fire's undone. right, so I think we're pretty much ready for paint. I think it did a fairly decent job. And in conclusion, you know what can we say about this tool? I think for what it is, it's fairly decent. You know, a lot of times when you're buying tools, you sometimes have to be a little bit realistic about what you can actually expect from that tool. And really, I just double checked. I paid 19 bucks for this, $19.99 on sale. And the media that I'm using is $10.99 for a 50-pound bag. And ultimately, that's a fairly inexpensive way to get into doing some blasting outside. Now, looking at the mess that we have, I kind of second guess whether, I'm sure it'll be fine. But if you live in town, if you live in, you know, you're doing this in your backyard or your garage or something, definitely you need to consider the big mess that's going to be left behind, because this is a lot of crap all over the ground. But you know what? Ultimately, I think it's a pretty good little buy. Mostly, I just wanted to see if these things actually were worth anything. Now, the one thing I noticed is that some of the paint on here, it appeared to be like a latex paint, and there were actually 4 different colors of paint on this. That latex, it had a hard time peeling it off, and that's why I went and switched up to my die grinder with a wire wheel. And if I get all the big chunks off, this did a really good job of bringing it down to metal. The paint that was originally on here was green, kind of a classic color. I'm not sure what type of paint that was, but it came off really, really nice. It was just, and it peeled it off really quickly. My first thoughts was I was a little bit surprised at how small the little working area was. It's about an inch, maybe just under an inch that you're actually applying the abrasive media to. But then again, I mean, you can't really expect much more from something this small. And one thing I would say too is that you're going to need a decent air compressor. You're going to want a decent air compressor to run this. I've got a 60-gallon air compressor. I'm not sure of the CFM, but it's a bigger air compressor, and it certainly had no issues keeping up with this. If you were doing this at home and you didn't have quite a large air compressor, I think you would get by, but you would just be waiting for your air compressor to catch up quite a bit. But all in all, is this a worthwhile tool to buy? Well, I think for the price it is. I definitely think this will work really well on bicycle frames when I'm rebuilding bicycles. So to that end, I think it's actually a pretty good little purchase, and mostly I just wanted to see if these things actually work. You know, you go into auto parts stores and sometimes you'll see these, some of the big box hardware stores and stuff like that, they've got these things, and I was just curious about them. Like, is it a gimmick? Do they actually work? And I guess, you know what, like most tools, know what you can reasonably expect from the tool. I think these things actually work pretty good. Anyways, I'm pretty happy with this. It definitely held up. I ran about, I would say probably 10 or 15 pounds of media through this thing, and it's still working perfectly fine. I'm not entirely sure what maintenance would be involved, maybe just clean it up. And the one thing too is I kind of wish I had suited up a little bit more, because I've got pieces of recycled glass in every single nook and cranny. It's in my ears. I'm pretty sure it's, instead of going to work right now, I'm probably gonna have to go have a shower. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. And as always, I thank you so much for watching. Cheers.